We're hoping that they can find the way to the Way reunion easily with those signs. Here along 322. And I believe that's Clay Road.
Yeah, we went down here, turned around, came back, and looked over. There looks like Alice. Well, who's that?
Uh-oh, there goes Alice's bike.
But it just seemed like it would be too close. Yeah. Getting home yesterday and coming here today.
There we go, the Big 7. In the year 2000.
I never know if I should use that term, but they said it was okay. So, and they grew up on the farm outside of St. Holly. And I don't know if anyone has something. We want to keep it a little more informal than what maybe we originally planned. If one of you have a story about something, and other ones remember something, this is primarily for them to tell us about their days growing up. Because I think a lot of stories haven't really been told, at least everyone. I know some of Mom's, I relayed to Brooks one day, and he's like, oh, I never knew that.
Listen up here. Well, Alice told us we had this thing coming way back in November. I've been working on this speech ever since. I'd like to tell you about being conscripted into a conscientious objectives camp during World War II. I was there for 4 years. But Alice says it's supposed to be childhood memory.
That's fine.
I'd like to tell you about going to China, living there for 2.5 years, and being taken hostage by the communist armies and held overnight for 3 nights and being shot at on the way home. But Alice says, childhood memories. our kids' time, I'd like to tell you about being a professor at Cornell University for 50 years and helping to introduce 2 new apple varieties, the Empire and the Johnny Gold, which are being grown around the world by hundreds of thousands of bushels now. But it's childhood memory. I was born during World War I, 4 days before the end of the war. And Mother said that despite the, it was a great celebration. It's supposed to be the war, to end all wars. And when it did end, there was all the church bells in the country rang, great jubilation. And but Mother said that I kept on crying. Horace was 3 years older, and he kept jumping off the desk. our kids' time, they say we were born back in horse and buggy days, but we weren't really very nice. We were born during the Model T days. The Model T Ford has 3 pedals on it. One is the reverse, push back, and there's the back. The other one is the brake. And the third one is you push it down as low gear and lift it up as high gear. And you have to crank the thing. There's no start on it. You have to crank it. But I remember we had a Model T Ford, and that was our family car. It opened, no windows on the side. But it was a great vehicle. Along about those times, early, Father had to go to Port Matilda to do some business over there. And they drove over the mountain, and coming back, You know, the railroad track goes up and down the Baldego Valley there. Well, we're coming back, the train was coming. Well, we got on the tracks and we went up the old big stall. And the train hit it. So, well, before it hit it, Father could see it was going to hit it. So we were making, Elwood and I had bib overalls. We grabbed us by the bib overalls, pulled us out of the car, and a second later the train hit it. And the old Model T car went down around and hit the road of tiles that were laying there. Those cars, you know, they had wooden wheels, wooden spokes. Model T. Well, it broke the wheel. I wasn't my fan. When I was 4 years old, I was assigned to do sort of babysitting. Couldn't go out and work at that point. And so Mother had to go to the barn to milk. And it was, at that time, the barn was closed, you couldn't see any activity. And so I sit at the kitchen table there, just, I suppose, Elwood, maybe Rebecca, maybe Joseph, probably not Robert yet, when I was 4 years old, waiting and waiting for Mother to finish milking. And finally, she would appear and come down back to the house, and I was so relieved. When I was 5 years old, well, the rest of them the same, came on the same degree. We used to go over to Uncle Will's to visit quite a little. Well, some, maybe once a month or something like that. Now, Uncle Will was our father's brother, and they lived next door. Uncle Will's family was a little bit older than ours. There was Herbert, and then Miriam, and Ethel, and Betty. Betty, the youngest one, is a year older than Mars, our oldest one. So we would go over there to visit, maybe to borrow a cup of sugar or something. And one time I was 4 and Elwood was 3. And Elwood got started on this story about things going back home. The cow kicked the bucket and filled them up or something. And Ethel, she was just making fun of us. Oh, you don't say so. Yes, I do say so. Going about the same period, we'd go to Uncle Will's place. He was the first one in the valley who owned a crystal set for a radio. They had the earphones, of course, no loud speaking. But once in a while, he'd let us put these earphones on and hear the radio. In 1927, Lindbergh made the first flight across the Atlantic Ocean. I remember that. We were hauling manure that day. Most of the summers we went barefoot. Mary was always kidding me about he had started work at 6 years of age. Indeed, I had to go out and run the team of horses, plow and harrow the field. Didn't do it plowing. It was a had no kindergarten at Stormtown School, so I started in first grade at 7 years of age. I hadn't gone to English school up to that, well, homeschooling maybe. It was a full mile to walk up to Stormtown School, and Morris and I and the rest, I guess later on, it was combined. Well, while I was there, the teachers used to kid me. I could wiggle my ears. I can still do that. This is sure proof that the man is descended from monkey. I'm kidding. Hush up. We had a dog named Jack. Well, the cars weren't very fast, and he could see them coming down up the end of Mother Will's Lane. Cars coming up the road. And he would take off. He would head up across behind Brooks Storage there, right up, and he'd catch the car. The time he got up there to the next lot, and he'd bite at the wheel. In 1930, along about then, our mountain burned over. Well, the trains on over in Port Matilda, they were fired by coal, and the sparks would fly out in the very dry summer, and along the forest there would catch on fire. Caught on fire. Well, we could see it was coming. So Father took me and just me, and we walked over the mountain to get over there and try to put it out before it got too far. But it didn't happen. It came right up the mountain and burnt the whole mountain, right from that hollow over to the next hollow. Smoke. And for 20 years after that, during when it rained, we could smell the charcoal on the mountain. Betty next door, she thought the thing was going to end right there, and she was all packed up, ready to leave. Well, during this time, 1930s, that was the Depression, the depth of depression. We've all heard about the Depression. Well, we lived through it. But it really didn't affect us all that as much as it did some other people, because we were sort of self-sufficient there at home on the farm, milk and apples and all of that. But up at the other place, the next door down was George Casher, lived there. He had 10 kids. And he was out of work during the Depression. All of a sudden, one week, he got a job for $8 a week. And even in our own household, one time toward the end of the Depression, I remember somebody discovered a loose $1 bill under the kitchen table. So it was a very stressful time during the Depression. And it affected not only all the population, but it affected us even fairly well to do anyhow. And it's my memory that made Father very bossy. There's only one compliment I ever remember him giving me for something I might have done. Other times it was always growling, just stressed, and this rubbed on to me. And I got very bossy. Went down though, and not him, but or here can testify to my bossiness. And of course, I could apologize, but I don't think Father was born and brought up as Quaker, you know. And Mother would call him thee and thou, and that's thee, not thou. But he would never call her thee. He would just start out the sentence. Then it came to the kids. What do you call them? Thee, thou. No. He wouldn't call us thee either. But he would say he in the second person. He is actually third person. The second person. So if we do something bad, our Father would say, he needs a pill. We had to go down cellar once in a while to get a jar of tomatoes or to stoke the furnace or something. We come back up and forget to turn off the cellar light. Well, we got fined 5 cents every time we got the cellar light. Everybody had their own money, sort of on the books. It wasn't in your pocket. In 1931, we got electricity. It came up the valley, new poles, electric company put in all this. Well, you know, they got these hookers that can climb up the pole. Well, us kids, we were pretty smart at making equipment and stuff. So we copycatted those hookers that hook in the wooden pole, you know, you can climb right up. We didn't get all the way to the top, but our hookers were pretty good. Grandmother Whiteley was in Indiana. So every 3 or 4 years, Mother had to go out. Well, she wanted to go back and see the home folks. Her mother and her 2 sisters, Anna and Emma. And so somebody had to stay home for, and not the shadows, of course, that was me. We had the Bible reading every Sunday morning, after breakfast on Sunday morning. And every week we would read a chapter, and each person would read a verse going around the family. I took piano lessons from Margaretta, and a family would drive me over to State College to get a lesson. So I'd like to finish up by telling 2 stories about Mother. We raised peaches, and of course, beginning in mid-July, the phone calls started coming when the pizza's going to be ready. And after a while, the phone was ringing off the wall, and the mother thought it was beyond the call of duty. So she got a pair of wire cutters, went down the cellar, and cut the wire. My mother about the peaches, and the lady said, well, what do you think I ought to do with them? And my mother said, take them out in the backyard and throw them over the fence. But one thing about my life is I like to talk about my romance. A lot of you people know this, but I'm sure that some of you don't. But Joseph and I had just gotten our license to fly an airplane. And about that time, there was a strange meeting over at State College where the lecturers and so forth from around the state of Pennsylvania came, and in that hall that night, where they had square dance, and so we were, the Center County boys and girls were invited in to help square dance. And one of my buddies says, I square danced with that lady across there. You want to dance with her? So I did. Well, it turned out that she had to be a school teacher. She had taught a couple of years in elementary school, and so things went along pretty good that night, and we walked them home, or I at least walked one of them home, and the other girls, they had to go home back to the dorm, but I sit out in front of them, the fraternity house for about 2 o'clock in the morning, and finally called it quit and went home. But in the process, as I said, started out the story, Joe and I had gotten our license, and we were really breaking to someplace long to fly to. Now, this convention was in July, so I don't know exactly what day it was, but anyway, it was sometime in August, and we went to meeting that Sunday morning. We went to out to the airport. Now, the airport at that time was out of Goldsburg, and we rented an airplane. We flew across Pittsburgh, and the parents were down there playing, and we could have gone and stopped and saw them, but anyway, we landed in West Virginia. They
The home was about a couple of miles from the West Virginia border, and the nearest airport was West Virginia. And she had gone to town and bought a badminton set and so forth to entertain these two guys. But she and her sister was waiting there, and we went home, and within 10, 15 minutes after we got back to the place, she was a farm girl, and her dad wanted to take me out and show me the cows and the oats and so forth, but we didn't do that. But we did stay pretty long that day, and by the time we got back in the airplane and got back to the State College, it was much darker than what it is now. I mean, the owner of the airport was pacing up and down because here these two inexperienced fellows were out there with that airplane, and he knew that we were coming home, and he was afraid we weren't going to get down before it was dark. Well, when we was going together, you see, she went to a county fair, believe it or not. She, for 25 cents, she had her picture taken. And this was in 1946. And that picture has been in my pocketbook ever since. I guess that's about all I have to say.
Yeah.
Well, my story's going to start with going to visit grandmother. Grandmother lived at State College with Margaretta. And we had this old car, which Roger talked about. And we would get in this car and go on really twisty, windy roads to get to State College. They didn't have these beautiful big highways that they have now. And then for father, I'm going to talk about different people. So father is the next one I want to talk about. And one of the things that I remember about him is when we would go to Quaker meeting, which was down the big building that I guess is torn down now. Okay, it was down close to Great Hall in the big building. And we would go in and sit down. There would be very few people there, but Father would be in charge of this Quaker meeting. And very seldom would anyone have anything to speak about. But at the end of it, he would get up and we were going to sing a song. And it was almost always bringing in the sheaves. And you know, he was a farmer and he liked this bringing in the sheaves. Then Mother will be involved with a lot of the stories I have to tell. And then for Morse, we didn't have these big swimming holes like you have now. And somehow, the creek that runs down through the meadow, they got a big log across from one side of this creek to the other. And Morse was the engineer, of course, and we built a dam. They would put different sticks down across this. Do you remember building those dams? And then we would get sods from along the side of the creek and put them down and then dam up the water, and this is where we would swim. And we would have to swim from this one corner down to the end of the dam before we could get a swimming suit. And I remember Roger standing out there going, Roger didn't like the water. But he swims now. And one of the things that Roger didn't tell when he was over in China, I'm going to tell the story the way I know it, that may not be quite accurate. But there was somebody was in water, almost drowned, right? And Roger jumped in and rescued that person. If that person had not lived, Roger probably would not have it too, right? Well, that's the way I heard it. But Roger did save that person's life. And then Elwood, I remember him being quite an organizer. We would go to 4-H club meetings, we would go to Grange meetings, and he was always very active in that. But he also organized baseball games. We would play other communities. Now, this was all men, young boys would play. But one time, they didn't have enough to play on Elwood's team. And he came to Mother, could Rebecca play? And it took a lot of persuading to get Mother to say yes, and she finally did. So when I went out there and then the other team, boy, they thought, we'll get her out. And they pitched the ball real easy, and boy, did I slam it. We played ball at home all the time. And then for Joseph,
Well,
no. One time, we had a great big living room. And we got up one morning, and Joseph says, look at me. He came to me, look at me. He turned around to me back, look at me. He had pimples all over him. So I went to Mother, and I said, well, there's something wrong with him. And in no time at all, she had everything, almost everything moved out of this big living room, and Joseph was shut in that living room. And I don't know how long he stayed there, but he had scarlet fever.
Oh.
And Mother would go through the cellar way, around through the hall, to take care of Joseph. She, and none of the rest of the family got it.
Okay.
No, he hadn't. But if we wanted to see him, we had to go around to the front porch and look through the window. We did that.
How long was that?
Well, I don't know. 6 weeks,
10
probably.
days.
Right, it seemed like you were in there long.
Enough for a good antiviral.
I really wasn't sick. People had scarlet fever, got very sick, and some died. I was not sick, and I was really only quarantined for 10 days.
You remember? You remember?
Yeah.
Sure, and being isolated back then, I'm sure he was. But you never know. And then Robbie. We used to go up to between the orchard, between the ridges and along the front ridge and pick berries. And Robbie had to go along with me. I was the main picker, but I had to have somebody to guard me. So Robbie would go with me. My pail was to be full, but it didn't matter how big. And usually there were too many. But he took care of me. So. And I remember when Ralph was born.
Oh.
Yay! Father and Mother had gotten up during the night and taken a bed from the second floor down to the first floor, and the baby was born during the night. And then it was time for us to get up in the morning to go milk cows, and Father came to call us, and he said, come down and see, what do they call you?
Mistake.
Well, anyway, I thought he was just the dearest thing there ever was. But another story about him, when he maybe was 4 years old, I'm not just sure. But we had the threshers come, and they would come, different men would come, and they would work up in the barn and do a real hard day's work. But Mother and I had to get the food back. And so Ralph had to stay there and help us. And when it was time for all of these working men to come in, and we were all ready for them, he says, "Can I go out and come in, walk in with the men?" And then the one story about me that I guess probably got part of this started was when Elwood was ready to go on a trip for his senior year in high school. The car was up back of the barn. The barn was 200 feet from the house. There was a little stream between the barn and the house. There was something in this car that Mother wanted. So I went up to get it. It was starting back from up around the barn. It wasn't down to the stream, which is about halfway between the house and barn. A bull started to chase me. I didn't know the bull was out, and he really bellowed. And then I screamed. And pretty soon the dog came and got between me and the bull and just went back and forth. And pretty soon, the bull started to follow the dog. Somebody, and I don't know who, came and got me, took me to the house in the car. And in the meantime, this old bull went clear out to the other end of the field there, back of the house, clear out on beyond the lime kiln, and came back before I got into the house. And I'll tell you, I've been afraid of bulls ever since.
I don't read the mail at our house, and I didn't know about this assignment. But I do remember living through the Depression. There were several things about the Depression that were pretty rough. First of all, Roger said we were pretty well self-sufficient, and that's true. We had apples and we had all of the milk and so forth. But we also raised a little bit of wheat. And when the feed grinder came to grind feed for the cows, we had some wheat ground, and that wheat was used to make breakfast food as you would make oatmeal. We called it gram, and we ate a lot of gram when we were growing up. And I guess it was fairly nourishing, fairly good. So that's one of my recollections of the Depression. Through those years, we spent a lot of time with our 4-H projects. 4-H meant a good bit to me. And I can remember one time when I guess I was 10 or 11, that we'd been out to the 4-H meeting the night before, and Father asked at breakfast, what did you discuss last night? And I said, well, we discussed the different kind of projects we're going to have, and they talked about bee projects. And you know, that was one of the times when Father really showed his excitement to what I was telling him. He didn't show that too much, but this time he did want to know if I was going to be interested in the bee club. And sure, I would be interested in the bee club. So that was kind of my beginning of keeping bees, and I still have some bees today. And Father was very grateful for that because he used to go to the sales, and he'd come home with a couple of hives of bees that he couldn't handle, and they kind of got out of hand and never really amounted to too much. But in the 4-H project, my bees did real well. I don't know what else I was supposed to say. I remember we had the home farm down in the valley, and then Father bought this farm up where the orchard is on top of the mountain. But there was a barn up there, and every once in a while we put some livestock up in the barn, up in that barn. And for some reason, we had a bunch of hogs, too many for the home farm, so these hogs were up at the upper farm, up where the orchard is, down there on top of the hill. And I don't know, there were about 20 of them, I guess, and it was time to bring them home. But the easiest way to get those home was to drive them home down the road 2 miles. And I don't know why this happened at night, but
Oh my.
right down there, right between S.P. Gray's and Clarence Gummo's, right along the road, during the night, and that car hit that pile of hay.
Oh my.
I don't really remember what happened to the car. But we did what you're I remember when Marsh got married, there was a question about who was going to go to this wedding. And I got elected to stay home. So help me, the upper field was in corn, and the whole time they were up at Hartford for this fancy wedding, I was cultivating corn with a team of horses. And you know, that was a pretty dark day for me for some reason or other. I kind of missed out on all the fun. I don't know who else was home, but there wasn't many other home but me. And I can also remember when we had a mule, his name was Pete. And I guess all mules are named Pete. But anyway, this mule was a real mule. I mean, you have a reputation of mules that are kind of stubborn. Well, Pete, he was as stubborn as he could be. I remember one time, I used to haul the milk out the end of the lane with Pete. And he did all right on that. He didn't mind pulling the spring wagon out the end of the lane. But one time, Father wanted me to take that mule out and bring this double furrow plow in with the mule, which I guess was going to be a hard thing to do. But I hooked the mule to this double furrow plow, and he did, when I'd say, get up, somebody had tripped the plow, so it was down. And I couldn't get this mule to move, well, I tripped it up. But if I leave him, he'd pull those 2 plows, full plow, in the ground, plowed 2 furrows at a time. But anyway, it was kind of a sad day when Marsh had come home from college and went to put Roberta on old Pete, and Pete knocked those 2 front teeth out for him.
Oh.
That was a pretty close call, and I was standing in the barn when that happened, and that was pretty serious stuff. But anyway, after that, the father decided to sell Pete. He sold it to Motsy Reese, and Motsy Reese took this mule over there, and he found out what a stubborn mule could be. And he had him out in the field hauling oats in a wagon, and Pete decided he didn't want to move. So Motsy, he just took a sheaf of oats and set it on fire and threw it under the and the mule pulled the wagon up over it. He break the wagon up. So Motsy got him back home, and we got him back that time. He got sold again, but I'm not quite sure we sold him. Russ was talking about working on the old storage, and I can remember when we added the addition to the old apple storage, and I guess that was back in about 1931, and that was really quite a storage at that time. It doubled the size of the storage capacity there, and you used to have the apples in there in shells, brought them in baskets, or dumped them out in shells, and I can remember some buyers coming in here and saying, I never thought there were this many apples in the whole world. But it was quite a display of apples there. And then we got the cooling system in, the ammonia system, and somehow or other I inherited a lot of the jobs that involved making those things work, including building a buck brake and a few other things along the way.
Pete was a mule. He was as stubborn as Joe indicates. But there was one thing that Pete liked to do. We found an old sleigh in the hayloft up in the wagon shed, which was the sleigh that Father had gone to Tyrone to pick Mother up after they were married. And this sleigh was put up in the hayloft, and we got it down, and we would pick one of these horses up, and they would just sort of plug along. But for some reason or another, old Pete, you put him in that, hitch him up to that sleigh, and he would run like crazy. The roads and the highways at that time would be packed with snow. And for some reason or another, that mule, when you put him to that sleigh, he just loved it. He just loved it. And he would run clear down to where Claire Fisher is now, which is 4 or 5 miles, and he would turn around and run back. And we would have 3 or 4 sleds hitched onto the end of that. On the sleigh, and a couple kids on each one, and he would keep going. Some of the other things that I remember, as a boy, I was in about the 6th or 7th grade, about the age of Tony or some of these boys around here. And I was going to school at Stonetown. And next door, a family lived there by the name of Way. It was John Way, and John Way had a daughter who never married, and she was maybe, I thought 50 years old or even older, but she may have been only 25 or 30. Anyway, she went insane. And it was on a day that everything was very cloudy. And our school teacher's name was Miss Peters. It was in November, just before the election. And we had just gotten electricity in the schoolhouse, and there was lights. The lights were on, and here comes Olive Way running over there, and she pounds on the door, and Miss Peters started to the door and pound, and Miss Peters hurried to the door and pound, and opened the door, and she said, "Oh, Miss Peters, I just wanted to tell you, the Republicans won the election." And away she went. She didn't get more than 100 feet from or 50 feet from the school. She turned around and went back. Banged on the door again. Banged on the door again. Miss Peters went to the door. She said, "Miss Peters, the schoolhouse is on fire. Get all the children out of here." Well, Miss Peters said, "No, the schoolhouse is not on the fire. The lights are on." So that seemed to satisfy her. She turned around, went back, she moved up to the house again, she turned around and came back, banging on the door again. And she said, "Are there any of Dardway's boys here?" I was the only one. They're supposed to come over to my house. I called Dardway and he said that his boys were supposed to come over to my house, and that was the last thing in the world that I wanted to do. So, as time went along, I was, again, 12, 13, something like that, just at the age of being scared. So, at night, whenever we came home, my job was to go up in the stile and put the silage down. We realized you climb up that ladder, you go into the stile, it's dark. And I mean it's dark. And you see nothing. And this was one of the things that put more fear in me than anything else. Some of the other things that happened after Pete was sold, Nell had to run the cart out with milk to the road so as the truck could pick it up. And we were always late. We were always just 2 minutes late. And Nell was very smart. Nell was a real horse. And Nell knew that as soon as someone got on her back, she had to run. Run to catch the milkman. So, I was stepped off the edge of the, where the milk house was, onto this cart. And Joe mounted Nell. And Nell started to run. And I went up there. And I really got her in the back. I mean, I still have a mark. I'll tell you a little bit about my romance. When I was about that age, I remember going with Father over into Pine Grove Mill area to get some corn. We were going to feed the pigs or cows or whatever it was. And we went back this road and we went back a long way. And Father did his dealing and we got the corn. But for some reason or another, there was a girl standing there. She was maybe a couple years younger than I was. And for some reason or another, I remember that. And I'm just as sure as anything with that gal there. Don't believe it. Speaking of the Grange Fair, we used to go to the Grange Fair. We had play. And this one year I wasn't in the play, but I would sing. Beautiful dreamer. Of course, that was entertaining. But this gal sitting here was in the audience. And this was about the time it was starting to get serious. So her family really picked up on that. And she's never lived that down. And whenever we had our 50th anniversary, our kids picked up on it. Some of the other things that I remember, I don't remember about the bull chasing Becky, but I do remember times that Elwood and I were out at the line court. We were bad little boy. We were out at the lime quarry and the lime kiln was burning. We used to build a burn and lime kiln. We went out there and we were picking up these sparks and trying to make believe we were smoking. This went on until I always said, you know, we better not do this. Mother might see us. And then about the lime kiln, one summer, we had planted a peach orchard up on the mountain. And my summer job was to take the lime kiln, load it on a wagon with a team of horses, haul that lime up to the peach orchard and spread it. And I had to do this day after day. And it got so bad one year with one day with the lime causing injury around my ankle that Mother finally stepped in and says, no more. That's the end of it. Of course, there are a lot of other stories, but I think I've talked long enough.
I know that.
Your job, I'll trust you.
I'm not a speaker like these guys.
And here I thought you would tell a story about me and my shoes.
Your shoes. Whose shoes were they? No,
Oh, wow. It's a good story. That's good. Tell us about your romance. Well, I would like to add just a little bit to one of the stories Roger had about this fire that came up over the mountain and down. And I was over at Uncle Will's, and Betty and I were on the front porch, and I imagine there were some other people there too. But I was not to go over and look out at this fire, which had not come up over the top yet. But she went in the house, and I went over and I looked. I could see all this smoke. But they were so afraid that this, my part of it, it seemed that they were afraid that this fire was going to come down through the orchard, through a field, and down and burn our buildings, the barn and the house. So somebody went up, I don't know who, and made a fur across the fields so that the fire would not come on down through the fields. But we had sheep, and they had picked under the apple trees up at the ridge, and the fire stopped before it got even down to where they had made these furs. But it was a real scary thing, that fire. I remember that very distinctly.
Elwood, could you tell the next generation what happened to the house? How that happened when it burned?
We lived in an old house. Is there any pictures of our old house? But anyway, this house was built about 1836 or something like that. And it was a complete frame house, 13 rooms. Something like 13 rooms. It's quite a large house. And my grandmother had a lean-to on the back of the house with a fireplace, so it's to heat her water for washing. And so we used this same construction to make apple butter. And so every year, right after we got done picking apples, then we would make apple butter for ourselves. We weren't selling it at that time. And so, this one particular day, we were making apple butter, and it was very, very extremely windy. I mean, very windy. And the two boys were in school, or at least David was in school, and Emily was having teacher conferences that day. But in order to make apple butter, you have to have a copper kettle, and you put in about 40 gallons of cider. You have to pour the cider down to about 20 gallons. And then you start putting in apples. You have to get up about 5 o'clock or 4 o'clock in the morning to start this. And about noontime, you start adding the apples. And then by 5 o'clock or 7 o'clock, depending upon the weather, if it's a day that the things evaporate real fast, your apple butter got finished much sooner. So, we were making apple butter, and it was 9 o'clock in the morning. Emily was upstairs getting ready to go to school to have a teacher conference, and I was in the kitchen, and she came down and said that there was smoke coming up to the cracks in the walls and so forth up into the bathroom, and so I went out and looked at the fire, and sure enough, because of the tremendous wind, and there was a crack in the flue, a fire had started on the long side of the flue. Now, I've said this 1,000 times. If I had just taken the cider and thrown it on there, I'd have had the fire out. But I didn't want to waste that cider because it was going to fire out anyway. And I knew I had all of the milk cans that we had the cider in. They're already up at the barn full of water. And so all I had to do is take my truck and go up and get those cans of water and get down there and get the fire out. The time I got back down with the fire, the fire was up over the roof door. And so we called the fire company. Well, we attempted to call the fire company, and first thing, our telephone was out of whack. So Emily went sailing down the lane to the neighbors who had bought grandmother's house right at the end of the lane to call the fire company. And they weren't home. And so she had to stop somebody on the highway and tell them that the house was on fire and call the fire company, and they did. Well, pretty soon the fire company came, and by this time, the time they got hooked up and was ready to start squirting the water away, nobody took a hold of the hose up at the house, and they started to pump, and pretty soon the hose broke, and then the water all leaked out, and of course we didn't have any water up there to squirt the fire anyway. They didn't open the faucet. They didn't open the faucet, but we got that fixed, and by this time it was ready to start squirting, but the fire was already coming out 3 sides of the house. And what's the use of squirting? And our garage was only 20 feet upwind from that house. And so I said that we're not going to squirt the house, we're going to concentrate on the garage, which turns out to be very successful. Not a thing burnt on that garage, only 20 feet away from this house. Like 1 o'clock, we pushed the logs in off the foundation of that house. And the fire had only burned 3 hours, and we pushed all the logs in off the foundation.
Wind was going up the valley.
And the smoke didn't go this way, the smoke went that way. I mean, it was a tremendous hard wind.
People down the valley didn't even know it was on fire.
And so the neighbor came up, smoke-wise, up towards Stormtown, they came. The only thing that we got out was some of the stuff in the kitchen and half the stuff out of the living room. We never got upstairs or anything.
What year was that?
1961. So in 1962, we had a good contractor, and we started to build a new house. And so the way we built our house is that he'd give us instructions, and we would work for about a week. It was a very dry year, you see, and we didn't have very much farming to do, so I hired another farmer, fellow to help me on the farm, see, and so I could write it off. Don't tell the IRS that. And he would come and we'd help get things organized and work for 2 or 3 days. Then his crew would leave and say, do this, do this, do this. And we'd work a week and, okay, we got that all done. Then he'd come back and work a little bit more.
If you didn't have it done, he did it.
He spent maybe half of his time there. We spent all the time. And by September, when we were ready to move into the new house.
Well, that was wonderful, and I think you should take it on the road.
I would like to thank Alice and, where's John?
Oh, back there.
For having this wonderful idea.
Thank you very much. Of course, I was moving into their community, and she was very good to me. And all the organizations that she belonged to, I joined. First, I joined the Friends Meeting. I joined the Women's Christian Temperance Union. I went to the Extension meetings, and I joined the Garden Club. And the State Horse Association. She really wanted me to belong to the things in the community and be part of the community, and I did.
I have one more thing to tell, intended to tell. Aunt Margaretta knew Ruth's mother very well. And they talked on the telephone. And in fact, Ruth took piano lessons from Aunt Margaretta long before she ever knew there was a Robert's Way. So one thing led to another, and we were planning to get married. And Aunt Margaretta and Ruth's mother were talking on the telephone. And Aunt Margaretta said, well, I think Robert is getting a pretty good catch.
You don't know about this guy, but I wouldn't dare tell him.
That Christmas story?
Yeah. Tell it. What was the story? Well, I had been feeding with mother to give me some equipment to go down to the brook to do a little fishing. And I don't recall how old I was, but it was probably about 9 or 10. And finally, she got all this gear collected, which is not real fancy stuff, but adequate. And I went down there to the bridge and put that in the water, and was there about 5 minutes. And here come you down the road with a piece of dirty stick that mother had to break off or something. and I'd been sitting there for half an hour, maybe 20 minutes or half an hour, and hadn't gotten a bite. And you come along with this rig, went like that, and out come a fish.
He was using a safety
It was good
swordfish.
Okay.
That was the day.
Good old day.
You remember that? Not well.
Breakfast. Saturday morning. Sunday morning. Ross is the treasurer and the brains behind this outfit. Just making sure everything is on up and up with the money.
Do not have ministers. They have no sacraments, no creed. It's purely, the worship service is silent meeting, and if anybody, and that includes all of you, if you want to give a message, you just, as the worship service goes along and is completely silent, if you have a message, it's your job to give it. It makes no difference how long it is. It can be 2 ways, it can be long dissertation, but ordinary, back in the good old days, Quaker meeting lasted for 2 hours. We'll be done by the time for lunch. Ordinarily, in 2000, Quaker meetings last from 3/4 of an hour to 1 hour. But even in that, we're going to make this a much shorter one, because we all have too much visiting to do and so forth. Now, to start out with, Darlington and Ina Way were both Quakers. And as I describe this, and if I use Quakers and friends, they're interchangeable. They both mean the same thing. Our fathers are my father, Darlington Way, his ancestors came to the United States in the middle 1600s, and they were Quakers all the way up to our father's father. And mother was a member of the Quaker meeting in Townsend, Indiana before they were married. The meeting at that before was in what is now the Grange Hall in Half Moon, and in 1933 the membership had dwindled to such a point, and in 1927 a meeting had started in State College, and at that point the meeting in Half Moon was closed down, and father and mother and all their 6 of the children, because Morris had started the college at that time, we didn't transfer our membership, but we started to attend the meeting in State College in 1933. The meeting, as it progresses, at the end of the worship service, it's ended by people shaking hands. And when the service ends, don't be too big a hurry to leave, because we hope we have a great big surprise for you. And after that, there will be announcements. Anybody have any short questions? There's no vocal prayer. We just sit in silence and worship on your own.
It is up to you to develop your spiritual journey.
You'll do it later. You can't put it on your to-do list and check it off and you say, I've created one. Let us be thankful for the blessings of being a part of the family.
I have a phrase which is often used, and it says, we are part of a blessed community. I feel today that I am part of a blessed community.
Very touched and moved in my heart to speak of Grandmother Way. I wasn't going to, because I knew I would break down. She is someone I dearly loved. She was always very good to me. And the really good memories are when my brothers were born, Grandma Way came to our house. She always brought a coffee pot because we didn't have a coffee pot in our house. And I remember her sitting in the rocking chair, chuckling and Dave and Molly. And oh, Alice. I still miss her today. I really loved her. And I'm honored to have been privileged to be a member of her family.
I just feel like John and I were talking last night. We have a lot of to be thankful for. To have a family history. There's so many people that they don't even know past their parents' generation, where they came from, or anything about their life. And I just really, I like what Emily shared about a spiritual journey. I just feel God has given me a very rich spiritual journey. And that we all have, I'll get this out. We all have a lot to be thankful for. When we look at third world countries, and I know the pressure on kids like to have the latest this and the newest model of that, and it permeates our whole society, not just the children. But a lot of times the struggles John and I went through sometimes when he was at school, nothing compares with homelessness and the poverty that we can't even fathom that some people in the world are living in. We have a lot. And I think the days that we all tend to complain over this or that little thing, we need to realize that, we live in a very rich country. And we have a rich heritage in our family. I think a lot of us are blessed with close relationships with God. And I think it comes as a blessing from our ancestors. It's passed on through the generations.
Before 10 o'clock, if she could sing us a song. Well, it would have been nice if she could have been prepared, but she said she would do her best, and I guess she was in the back room for a little bit. We don't have a piano. Emily comes from a musical background, and that her father and mother and even her little brother are all just find great joy in music. And when we visited in their home a couple of weeks ago, there was 4 nice wooden plaques which she had been presented at the end of this school year for her excellence in music, not only in statewide, but also all New England chorus. Might have the names of these things wrong, and various other accomplishments with her music. So she's going to present us or give us the pleasure of listening to something, and I don't know what it is, but I'll let her tell us.
I picked off the top of my head Amazing Grace. I think it's a very beautiful song. I'll just start. Feel free to join in if you want to. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found, was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that brought my heart to fear, and grace my fears
the hour I first believed. When we've been here 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, we've no less days to sing God's praise than when we first begun.
So those of you who are halfway through this, get that done. And we'll be putting out prizes at that point for all the people who made an effort.
I just want to say, could we give John and Alice a round of applause for
I'm still searching for my sunglasses. Anywhere, I'd like to have some.
Is there anything else other than the baseball glove and sunglasses? We're going to be looking in the lost and found up there. Anybody else lose anything that you know of?
I found one.
Okay, that's one thing we're looking for.
Just sunglasses, huh?
And also, just to the Big Seven, you're sharing, I've heard nothing but just everyone was so glad. I know it was a little hard for some of the third generation to hang in there with us. I think it was invaluable.
Looking towards next year, we're still looking for volunteers for next year. We have a couple people going to be checking in on some things. If you feel led, we can go as far as Boston. Yeah. A few people. In that area. We can roll Florida out for this time of year. It's too far, it's too hot. New York State's good. Pennsylvania is good. How Alice got into this about a month after we had last year's reunion, there was nothing set. She called me on the phone one night, didn't even get us. She got the answer machine. I called back, I got her answer machine. We know each other twice, and it started to click. So it's not that hard to do for the next generation. Just jump in there. We're looking for any place and every place. And if 2 or 3 of you want to pull together, one person does one day and another person does the other day, we'll help you. Just keep in mind, it doesn't have to be set today. We're not going to set it today unless somebody walks up and says, I'm doing it. Okay?
Non-different, that's exactly what happens in a Quaker worship.
In the silent Quaker worship. There are some with ministry.
All of the messages were very acceptable.
Hit the what? Okay.
I'm not an actor. I don't pray that night.
I'm going to start with Friday evening. I'm sure. I figured it out. So, 120 and 200 and 400 plus 500. I might just use my calculator because I think I see it. I did it
Are you in there? Am I taxing?
This is how she does it. And she's been the captain of the ship. She's
And then a clean green plus the agricultural.
These special days, they get TA out during the late start time. But also, other ways, they go in and, there's a lot of college teacher, but they don't have their all Irish aides. I'm thinking to myself.
There's Lane's getting ready to take off.
Come on, let's go.
The motorhome. The bikes, the camera pod. Take a tour of the motorhome.
At the 96 game, Dr. Gott hit both the first and last home runs of the Olympics.
The Southwind RV with the Penn State sticker on the front bumper. Is this it? Whoa! It's a Penn Stater. We saw the Penn State sticker and we're somehow drawn to the
RV itself.
And to the RV itself. And
Grandma and Grandpa have the exact same RV.
You do?
Yeah.
Well,
They used to have the exact same. This is where Jason and Corey slept.
yeah. Well, now we would be cooling the entire outside of the world
If we didn't pull it shut.
we didn't pull it shut and then.
Keep it shut.
Good game. That's not mine.
There you go.
Are you actually
Yes.
recording?
No. Yes.
Right here. This is mine. Good. Rip.
Okay, and then there's
On
the
yellow.
back. This is pretty
Yeah, I
nice.
can go back to the gym. See ya. Okay, see ya.
Okay, bud.
You
See you
got it?
later.
No, I was gonna change. See ya. How do you?
There you go. And remember the antithesis of opening it is closing it. Good job. Whoa.
Nice place.
This thing is neat. Yeah.
There's the squirrel.
Yeah.
The resident squirrel?
Yeah.
There goes David.
Kevin. Wish you could call him David, but probably wouldn't be the best thing to do since his name's Kevin.
Doesn't that thing pick up sound?
Yes, it does. It's picked up everything we've said and even more.